Welcome to Culture Rebooted, a podcast from HR Rebooted. As a fractional chief people officer, Michelle Strasburger helps CEOs of fast-growing companies realign leadership actions with the culture you want to build. She enables your teams to re-engage, your leaders to unite, and your company to scale without losing its identity. On this podcast, Michelle and her guests share their insights on how to establish a winning organizational culture. Enjoy the show.
Thank you for joining us today on Culture Rebooted. I'm Michelle Strasburger, and today we are joined by a good friend of mine and startup CEO, Dominique St. Fleur. Dominique is the CEO of Intramark. Welcome, Dominique.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. Looking forward to this.
I'm excited too. This is going to be the first session, so we're kicking it off on a high note. We're going to talk today a lot about culture. It's in the name of the podcast, Culture Rebooted, but that'll be our main focus. But let's kick things off. Can you share a bit about your company's growth journey so far? What has been the most exciting part of scaling your team and operations?
Absolutely. And so just a quick bit about Intramark. Our purpose is to create a data layer on culture. And what that helps us do is identify hidden risks and opportunities within organizations, whether it be unwanted turnover or productivity gaps. And so Intramark is a relatively new organization. We take a unique approach to doing this. We call it a hybrid approach, so part software, part consulting. But a very key part of our growth journey has been founder-led growth, founder-led relationships, founder-led sales. And so given my background, I come from a pretty technical background. And so in starting a new organization, you wear many, many hats. And, I'm fortunate to really lean on a great team. But in that journey, we're still wearing a lot of hats. And one of the hats that I'm wearing is, going out there in the market, explaining what we do, and building relationships, to add value. In that process, it's a skill set, from a founder-led sales perspective, which is a little bit newer for me than anything else. It's both exciting and scary. And so part of the growth journey has been learning this new skill of communicating value proposition very succinctly, really taking someone from really not understanding or knowing you or your product or your company to really having a crisp understanding of what it is and how you add value in a very short amount of time. Because attention spans, we're all busy, all of those factors come into play. And so that's been an interesting skill that's been a very exciting part of our growth journey. And so I'd say that's one bucket. Another great, interesting bucket is really, being fortunate to have a great, great team around me. Building those relationships, understanding, everyone on the team is motivated in what they're interested in, all just very different aspects and personalities to cater to. And, me as the founder and CEO, I really look at my team as my primary customer. And so my job is to, as best as I can, create a product that's attractive for the team, so that we can continue to execute on a product that's attractive for the customer. So that's kind of my philosophy there. So it's been exciting. And so those two buckets, those two aspects, one, going to market, forming relationships, founder-led sales, and two, really serving my team as best as possible so that we can go to market as best as possible. Those have been exciting and it's been quite motivating, amongst many other things I could say about that.
I'm sure you just made a bunch of HR people that are listening to this podcast very happy when you said that your employees are your first customers. I like that perspective, and I think that helps ground what you're doing. As you said, your team wears many hats, and in many startups, that's not uncommon, where you have to wear many hats. I've worked in startups where I'm, the HR person, but I'm also helping build sales strategy and things like that. So that just happens. So how do you, in that, ensure that you've aligned your leadership team's priorities or your team's priorities with the cultural values of your organization?
Our number one value for Intramark is deliver trust. A lot of other organizations may have, a longer list of values, but for us, I think if we focus on that central value, everything else flows from that. And so for us, deliver trust is delivering on our brand promise. As far as what we claim we can do, we deliver on that. And we deliver on that while maintaining the trust and integrity of our brand and the trust of our customers and the wider base of stakeholders that we serve. And so it's really just doing what we say we're going to do in a way that is, again, something that we could proudly speak about on the front page of a newspaper. And so that's kind of our litmus test. And so as long as we deliver trust in the market, we feel like everything else is going to flow through that.
Were there any gaps or misalignments in the process of ensuring the team is aligned with that value?
Yeah, and so it's more about communicating what that value is. And me as a leader, I could do a lot better job of making sure that we're communicating that much more frequently. And so I think that's something that is quite common. Is we're so focused on the work and delivering the work that we want to make sure that we also have time to, again, communicate the values of the organization, really take time to reflect and also measure whether or not we're delivering on values. And so whatever your values may be as an organization, there should be some pretty strong and clear metrics that help you understand whether or not the organization's sticking to those values. So there should be KPIs next to each of the values that an organization really thinks about. And for us, it's, as we're going into the market, we're understanding what customer needs are, and we're developing metrics and KPIs and OKRs around delivering trust. And so our list is currently evolving, but as far as, keeping the team aligned on that, one of our goals for 2025 is to start incorporating metrics around delivering trust that the team could really start to rally around, and we can have some objective measures on whether or not we're achieving that outcome. And so it's just not about, saying that we deliver trust. It's also measuring that over time and having conversations and realignment exercises around those values.
I like that. I think that's a key piece is having KPIs. So it's not just values on the wall. You're actually ensuring that the organization is practicing it, because we do what we are measured on in organizations, right? As employees, we're gonna focus on what we're measured on. So if we're not measured on the values, then we can forget them. It can kind of go by the wayside. So I like that. That's really key. Are there examples you could share about how you would measure a KPI for trust?
Absolutely. Our best measure for that is to ask the customer. And so part of our process, our organization, we're focused on really helping facilitate feedback. And we'd be remiss if we didn't do that for ourselves. And so really having frank conversations with customers and giving customers the space. So, with our team, right, we may have certain team members that deliver on the work. Then we could have other team members that really ask the frank questions on how the health of the relationship, and whether or not trust was maintained or built on, or is that heading the right direction? So I think feedback from customers is really giving the customer room to give honest feedback apart from the direct service provider that's on the team is part of the strategy to collect that honest feedback. And then really from there, it's about, one of our goals for 2025 is have a more complete list of ways or metrics that we can measure this. But I think that's where we're at as a starting point. Where we think we can get to as well is start to quantitatively start to digest different touch points that were being taught, that Intramark as a brand is coming up, and start scoring those discussions or talking points to have an objective measure of, as best as we can, of how the market may view Intramark as well. That's going to be a longer term play, but short term, what's always accessible to us is ask for direct feedback from the customer and giving the customer room to provide that honest feedback in a safe space, and then start, measuring ourselves there, and then having, discussions and realignments internally, around those feedback points.
As a leader, what lessons have you learned about balancing the pressures of rapid growth with the needs to maintain a cohesive culture and aligned leadership?
Great question. When it comes to growth, what typically happens is the smaller the organization, the more defined the culture. But over time, what tends to happen is a bit of culture drift. So as more and more people start joining the organization, what tends to happen is if you were to take someone from the outside looking at the organization and start to take a look at what leadership wants the culture to be versus what the culture actually is, there's usually a gap. And so for our stage as an organization, smaller organization that's growing, how do we think about preventing that or mitigating that or getting realignment? For larger organizations and customers that we serve, how do we help them get that realignment back? And so I think that's super necessary. And it's a very interesting space because it's a lot happens, life happens, business happens, and culture starts to shift and it becomes tougher to measure over time. And so for us, when it comes to pressures, right, and pressures may come from external pressures and demands in the market or internal pressures as well, right? And so, making sure that teams align, employees are satisfied enough being at Intramark to deliver great work. So there are a lot of competing pressures, if you will, that may influence culture over time. For me, the way I think about it, referencing something I said earlier, is treating our employees like our customer, my primary customer. And so our leadership team is looking at, how, as we grow, how do we take a customer service mindset to our employees? And I think that's the right framework, because once you start thinking in that manner, what tends to happen is you start to ask yourself questions of how can I serve the customer best? And what is this product, right, that I'm offering to the customer? And so if we look at it as a product and we look at ourselves as a product manager of the employee's time, and the space that we're offering, our team to work in, that helps us have the right framework to start tackling the pressures that may be coming from external or internal. So for me, there's no one answer. I think it's a fluid, dynamic approach that is structured around the framework of this is my customer and I need to give them a great product. And so I'm going to really align my actions and start measuring as we grow whether or not I'm giving this great product. And so I think with that, with all the pressures that may be, if I keep that mindset, if I keep that framework, I think we're going to have a very good shot at, as we're growing rapidly, making sure that culture stays aligned with delivering trust for us, which is going to be very, very important in our ability to continue to serve customers. And so, culture is going to be absolutely very important for us to continue to measure. And I think the best way to doing that is the mindset that comes with it. And I think the best mindset is to view our team as, my customer, basically.
I think that it sounds like your values are very tied to not only your internal customers, which is kind of your North Star. And as you grow, you'll keep that as your guiding light, making sure that you're staying true to that. But then it also helps drive the customers, right? And drive the revenue. So it's a really interesting connection between talent and revenue.
Absolutely. And if I do a good job serving our internal customers, then our internal customers are going to have everything that they need to serve our end customers, our external customers. And so really it's doing a good job with my team, making sure that they have a great product that they show up for. That's just going to propel us to give the best service and quality to our end customers, and that cycle is just going to repeat.
Wonderful. If you could offer one piece of advice to other leaders navigating similar challenges, what would it be?
I'd say the one piece of advice, it's simple. A lot of the things that are simple are usually hard or just kind of are less not executed as well as they could be. And that's to listen. We're in the business of listening. So, feedback, employees and your teams really have all the answers you need. They have all the answers. Are you asking the right questions? Are you creating the right environment for that information to surface? Is that, being followed through? Is that information making it to right people who are making decisions? And also, do your teams feel comfortable providing that information, right? Do they feel like there's going to be some action taken in a meaningful way so that they don't feel like they're wasting their time giving information or giving feedback in a way that's just kind of screaming into a void. But with those conditions, with being able to listen and having tools and systems in place and processes in place to allow you to listen well and cut through the noise and get to the root. With that, I think it's that's probably my best advice is, as leaders, you have to listen well. You have to listen at scale, and your employees typically have pretty much a lot of the answers that you're looking for. Again, think about an organization or large teams. There are a lot of smart people, a lot of different perspectives, and so that's really a valuable base to leverage for pushing the organization forward. If it's treated as hierarchical, only these people are allowed to give this type of input versus these people, given their role, are only allowed to give this type of input. You'd be surprised, a lot of the great innovative out the box or the answers that are right under your nose could be it's anywhere in the organization. And so if you're not listening well, you'll miss a lot of opportunities to push the organization forward. And so that's my number one advice or recommendation is to listen well and put processes in place to do that. And
I agree with you. It sounds easy, but it's hard. It's hard to listen. It's hard. It's hard to put it out there because it's scary to get feedback sometimes when you think it's not going to be positive. But sometimes that's the best kind of feedback because you can take action on it.
And I totally agree with that. It's getting over that fear of what information is out there that I probably don't want to know about. It's probably safer for me to not know about it and just kind of continue. I think that's a good short-term strategy, but long-term, actually, I don't think that's a good strategy at all. But long-term is where it bites the most. And so not having a mechanism where you listen and have an opportunity to course correct with as much or as good information as possible that's coming from everywhere, but synthesized very, very, in a productive way. There's a lot of value that could be sitting on the table, that could be surfaced, that could save a lot of pain for the organization long term.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll learn more about Dominique and Intramark. So stay tuned.
Today's episode is sponsored by Intramark. Employee surveys offer generic info, thus generic solutions that do not drive economic value. Intramark's Simple Vibe software and unique survey process create a data layer on culture. Intramark designs custom survey campaigns that deliver real-time, predictive insights and recommendations tailored to specific teams and talent. This enables leaders to make better decisions faster by focusing their limited time and resources for the greatest impact on goals. Intramark also offers partner support to implement solutions without adding extra work for teams and leaders. Get actionable insights within 1 day of process start, full report in 20, with minimal effort from your team. Learn more at intramark.io.
Welcome back. We are talking to Dominique St. Fleur, CEO of Intramark. So, Dominique, let's find a little bit more about you.
Absolutely.
What inspired you to pursue your current career path, and was there a defining moment that shaped the leader you are today?
Very good question. So I started my career, in more of a technical consulting role for a Big Four firm, and had the pleasure of doing that both, stateside, overseas. Then for me, business school, then worked for a few large tech firms after that. But throughout my journey, I just saw this reoccurring challenge that larger organizations especially have is complexity in their workforce, in their organizational structure. There's just a lot of hidden risks and challenges and opportunities and just information flow and blockages, right? And so having gone through my career and having seen that, I saw an opportunity to start Intramark to help address that. And so a big part of where I am today has been the phenomenal training that I've received throughout these organizations, but also observing where, what they do well, but also the challenges that they have. And I think a very persistent challenge that I saw from one organization to the other was this information flow, blockage, hidden risks, and challenges that just were not surfaced. And so I just saw that as a huge opportunity to add value. And that's kind of where that's kind of landed me today. Taking a click, further below on that, my philosophy as far as leadership goes, just kind of referencing what we discussed earlier, is to look at my team as my customer. And I think that framework is extremely valuable in helping me think about creating an environment that people want to be in. That's not just a holistic environment. There's no one size fits all, but understanding as well that within that environment, there are specific needs of different people. How do you, at scale, cater to a broader environment, but also address and cater to specific needs that also align with the organization's goals? And so it's a tricky balance, but throughout my career, I think, leaders that I've observed, worked very closely with, people I've worked with, that's been a great approach. And it really puts things into perspective in how to approach, your teammates and people that are part of your team. And so those are the two things, just my journey through the various firms that I've had the pleasure of working for and with have taught me great skills, but also given me the opportunity of just kind of observing what are some of the challenges that they have and what are the right mindsets and frameworks to help navigate through some of those challenges. And that's influenced quite a bit of who I am today as far as a professional goes and my philosophy to leadership as well.
So looking back through that journey, what was the most valuable lesson you learned early on and that still influences your decisions today?
Yeah, it's relationships. And so throughout all these experiences, you're going to collect relationships that either lean on you or you lean on those relationships. But being available to cater to those relationships and also being willing to reach out and ask for help, your relationships are just key. And that's come up very clearly throughout my career. And having the right relationships is paramount.
So we're going to get a little more personal here and ask you a fun question, because there always has to be fun questions. What is one thing about you, personal or professional, that would surprise most people, even those who know you well?
Absolutely. Most that I have done, if you look at my background, some people will say it's impressive, but done a lot of that while terrified. And so I think that's another lesson I've learned in life as well, is being able to look at an opportunity or a challenge, because I think you could be terrified of both. The responsibility that comes with opportunities and just the fear of risk that comes with challenges. Sometimes they may look the same, challenges and opportunities, but being able to push through and push forward while terrified, grabbing the bull by the horns, being very unsure and uncertain, but doing your absolute best to tackle the challenge or seize the opportunity does not absolve you, of being terrified in the process, but learning how to push forward while being terrified is for me something that would be in front of the curtains. It kind of just seems sometimes seamless, interesting path, but what's happening behind the curtains. And I think for a lot of leaders or a lot of people in general, there's a huge story behind the curtains that just makes the show look smooth, but there's a lot of chaos that's happening behind the curtains that are just, it presents well, but there are a lot of scars back there and so for me, I think something that people may be surprised about is, pushing through while terrified is probably that.
I think there's probably a lot of CEOs listening to this that will relate to that, especially with startups. It's unknown territory, it's scary, and it takes a lot of guts to do it over and over again.
I agree. But push through while terrified. That's the way to do it.
Yep. So what's the best way for our audience to contact you if they want some more information?
Absolutely. Feel free to visit our website, intramark.io, intramark.io. rebooted.io. Feel free to also visit our LinkedIn page, information there as well, and you'll be able to find me through that. And feel free to just send me a message, and more than glad to respond to that.
Great. Dominique, I want to thank you for being part of our Culture Rebooted podcast. It was great to have you as our first guest to kick it off. Be sure to subscribe to both our podcast on all the major platforms and your YouTube channel for our videos. As I tell all my clients, culture is the sum of all that you do, all that you reward, and all that you punish, and very little of what you say. Culture is the foundation of greatness. So create a great culture. Until next time.